How's it going, ladies and bruises? I'm Bobby Sixkilla, and welcome back to Storytime with Bobby. We are playing Choices That Matter, and the sun went out once again, as usual. This is a long, long story. It's like reading a novel. It's like I'm sitting here reading a novel to you. It might take that long as well at this rate. Who knows? Maybe I should turn it into an audiobook as well. Anyway, so we are currently in hospital in Italy, because we passed out from smoke inhalation when our plane crashed. We're gonna call Sharon because Dolores is a dick. Sharon didn't pick up the call, and worried I tried calling her again. At that moment, Sharon threw aside her hospital curtain around my bed. Miss me? Shazza, I said, feeling more confused than ever. Poor possum, she said, you look terrible. Hey Petrus, come on in. Sure enough, my cheerful Indonesian friend walked in, looking as pleased to see me as Sharon herself. I've never met Petrus, have I? Petrus, I said, feeling like I was hallucinating. Did I meet Petrus? I don't even remember now. Yes, he replied happily. Now that we three are together, we can solve this mystery and bring back the sun, don't you agree? Absolutely. Poor possum's exhausted, said Sharon. Let's go eat some gelato. Oh, said Petrus, lead on. They waved at me, linked arms and waltzed away. I looked at the ceiling, wondering if I'd dreamed the entire encounter. A nurse came in backwards, dragging a tray of medical tools. Hello there, she said in a gorgeous Italian accent. I'll just run some tests if that's alright with you. Of course, I said, pushing myself into a sitting position. Thank you, grazie? She laughed delightedly. Prego, she replied and slipped a blood pressure cuff onto my arm. I smiled up at her, right into her golden eyes. Compliment her eyes and see what she says. What lovely golden eyes you have, I said, feeling like the big bad wolf gone wrong. Wronger. Thank you, she said. They're contact lenses, of course. I couldn't afford the surgery, or I'd have that done. Oh, I said, have you joined the 100th day group? The what, she asked. I felt relieved for one glorious moment. Is it something to do with Victor Santiago, she asked? Because if so, then it's part of a difficult but necessary cleansing process. Cleansing, I said stupidly. She nodded. So the sun comes back. Of course, I said brightly. Cleansing. Must have hit my head or something. Very important thing, cleansing. She said, taking a second look at my chart. I'm feeling tip-top now. Can I check out? She rearranged my pillows without meeting my eye. I suddenly felt incredibly vulnerable. If you like, she said with studied casualness, I could get a pair of golden contact lenses for you too. They're buying them in bulk at the chemist now. Oh, I said, hoping my acting was better than hers. That would be great, thank you. She sniffed and continued on her rounds. Teacher, why did you lie to your nurse? It is important to speak honestly to medical professionals. Not this time, Moti, I said, wondering what had happened to my underwear. I stood carefully and started looking around the room for my things. Why? My hand closed on the strap of my bag and I drew it out of the cupboard with a sigh of relief. Nothing was missing. Moti, I'm concerned that Santiago's influence is growing fast, and that his violence is about to get a lot worse. Right now, anyone allied with him is likely to be extremely dangerous. How will you receive adequate medical treatment? Excellent question, Moti. I drew back the curtains by habit before remembering that there was nothing but darkness outside. I shut them again and drew the privacy curtain around my bed for good measure. The hospital wasn't safe anymore. Nowhere was. Let's call Sharon and get her to help us out. Moti, I said in a low voice, please let Shazza know I might need help getting out of here safely. Yes, teacher. I got back into bed and spent time tracking Santiago's exploding popularity. We really need the sun back. It was immediately clear that Santiago was expanding the field of people he considered worthy to die. He used to be the most brilliant and innovative minds on Earth. Now, as far as I could tell, it was anyone he didn't like. Teacher, I do not want you to meet Mr. Victor again. If he sees you, he will kill you. I think you're right. As I obediently followed orders, I saw a message flash silently onto Moti's screen, telling me that Sharon had been informed of my predicament. I just hoped she and Petrus were alright, wherever they were. There was little I could do except to wait for my rescuers. I did so graciously, reading a newspaper article about the collapse of several governments in the previous 48 hours, and another informing me that Brad and Angelina had secretly gotten a quick divorce. The world was falling apart. I heard a wet thumping noise from my window, and when I got up to look, I saw birds hurling themselves at the building. Windows, bricks, concrete and all. Not just one idiot bird, not even a group. Dozens of different birds, watching the rest smash into the glass and fall, and then doing the exact same thing. I backed away from the window and drew the curtain before the window smashed. The birds didn't stop. It was as if the birds were trying to take down the building by sheer determination. I shivered. Then I heard the unshakably, obliviously cheerful tones of Sharon as she told a nurse she was determined to see her favourite cousin, me. She and Petra swept inside arm in arm, grinning with delight at their deception. Sharon perched on the edge of my bed. You really are hopeless without me. So true, I said. She flashed me one of her happy-go-lucky smiles and my mouth fell open. Her eyes were yellow. $200 for these, she said. Reckon your company will reimburse me for the cunning disguise? Absolutely, I said. She produced a set of scrubs. I was going to wear these as well, but I think they'll do better on you. You want them? Let golden-eyed Sharon take the lead. Sharon enjoyed playing a cult member a little too much. Okay, way too much. We seemed to be surrounded by golden-eyed Italians, and it was Sharon's dearest wish to give each one a nod, or a slap on the back, or a painfully unironic fist bump. At last, we were out of the hospital, and I breathed a sigh of relief, only to see Sharon continue her bizarre performance until we were booked into the Plaza Hotel, and the Do Not Disturb sign was on the double-locked door. Petrus exploded into laughter. You're half crazy, he said to her. Why didn't we meet earlier? I waited until Moti had thoroughly scanned the room for bugs before I spoke. Things are bad, I said. In Italy, more than most places. Sharon gave me a shrug. At least it's not too cold here. Canada's an icy pole. New Zealand sheep have all died of exposure. There are baby penguins freezing to death in Antarctica. All birds here are trying their best to knock down entire buildings, I said, making a mental note to check on Etienne. But you know Santiago's building's a stronghold here. Sharon shrugged again. He's not so tough. Shazza, I swallowed hard, reminding myself that Sharon was the type to pack extra sunblock after days of unmitigated darkness. As if reading my mind, she gave me a marginally less sunny grin. That kid in Egypt, Umi, I saw him on YouTube or something, saying he's not to lose the light. Bit late for that, I muttered. You meant metaphorically, she said. Probably. At least that's what his handler said. He has a handler, I asked, feeling a stab of pity for the kid. Sharon nodded vigorously. Better than a pitchfork mob, don't you think? I made a non-committal noise. If the sun comes back again, I'll happily join his optimism cult. In the meantime, I think we should find that astronaut, or more specifically, the cover-up surrounding him. Petrus brightened visibly. I did a few journalism classes once. Shall we just interview his family and see what happens? Okay. Once the adrenaline wore off, the escape from the hospital left me aching and exhausted. Sharon and Petrus were a little too enthusiastic in their desire to monitor my recovery from the plane crash, but it was nice to let someone else worry about things for a while. Petrus insisted on buying a full tailored suit in order to look like a proper journalist. I didn't have the heart to point out that most journalists couldn't afford tailors. He was having so much fun, and he was getting to know Rome. I encouraged Sharon to go with him, if only so that she didn't get bored and do something that got us kicked out of the hotel. She'd smuggled in a few cans of paint and changed the room to canary yellow while I slept one night, but I had a bad feeling that this was her version of restraint. Meanwhile, Moti had discovered the joys of YouTube, and had about as much taste as a 14-year-old who had yet to discover internet porn. Teacher, I have any set of videos for you to watch. Is there more cats dancing, I asked, because did you disapprove of my previous collection? No, I said, it was very amusing, but I don't appreciate the innate variety like you do. Whatever. Man, attitude. Please, Moti, just show me. I'm sure you've chosen this afternoon's YouTube clips very carefully. Just one, but it is highly compelling evidence. It seems one of the presidential campaigns left the race due to his fear of drawing Santiago's attention. Ah, really, I said, and the video shows proof. You do not believe me. I automatically put my hands in surrender, forgetting Moti was on my wrist. It's not that I don't believe you, Moti, it's just the internet. The internet is highly reliable, teacher. Yeah, for sure. It's an excellent source of learning and information, I said carefully. Whatever. Fuck, he's got an attitude. I sighed, wishing Moti didn't have the backup RAM to know if I simply switched it off. Once I realized that Petrus and Sharon were waiting for me to cheer up before getting back to work, I insisted we begin. After a few dead ends, and despite a growing paranoia about Italy's golden-eyed citizens, we finally found Luca Parmigiano's sister, Rosa. She was willing to talk. We met her at a public cafe that I presume was close to her house. She was easy to spot, an overweight woman pushing back masses of black hair between sips of her cappuccino. We introduced ourselves and sat at her table, where we asked a series of softball questions about Luca and Rosa's childhood rivalries and family stories. Oddly, the most outrageous tales of childhood mischief made her eyes fill with tears. Dolores was right as always. Something smelt fishy. Comfort her until she tells us the truth, yeah. Your brother's time and space was... I began. She burst into tears. What is it, I asked. Not here, she whispered. Maybe at the dock, at Dock 3 at 1 p.m. tomorrow. With that, she tossed a bill on the table and fled, her hair bouncing on her back. Said Petrus. Trap? Trap, I said. Where will you go, he asked. Of course we'll go. I'm going, said Sharon, obviously. Would you like to take the lead, or shall I fight Sharon for it? Petrus asked me. I rolled my eyes at both of them. I didn't expect anything less, Shazza. And Petrus. Since when were you an action hero? He sobered up for a moment. Since scientists started getting killed. Plus, action heroes get the best scars, said Sharon. Petrus winced and unconsciously turned away from her. So which of us takes the lead tomorrow? Sharon, of course. Yeah, let's do it ourselves. We got this. We're healed. We ordered room service and had an incredibly awkward conversation with the beautiful golden-eyed woman who brought us our ravioli. By the time we convinced her that we were genuinely thrilled at the idea of Santiago coming to Rome, our dinner was cold. I ate in silence, lost in thoughts of whether Santiago or the missing sun would cause more harm. It all depended on how long the sun was out. Would it come back at all? I hoped that Umi Kid was right, and we weren't completely doomed yet. I wish they had durian, said Petrus with a sigh. What on earth are you talking about? I said, realizing the others had been talking. What, the smelly fruit? Gelato, of course, said Sharon. Glad you're paying attention, you wallaby. I felt suddenly misty-eyed. Santiago wasn't the only person with an overwhelming personality. Sharon was bonkers, but in a good way. She'd never give up or get discouraged, and I needed that. Sorry, she said with a mischievous glint in her eye. Now we've got tomorrow sorted. What do we do tonight? What do you have in mind? What we need, said Sharon, with that all too familiar glint in her eye, are spies. I said cautiously. People to tell us what Santiago's doing, she said. Don't we have the internet for that, I said. Maybe if you only want to hear about the mayhem when it's over, she said. Don't you think it'd be handy to know in advance? I sighed. That sounds like good sense, but I know you just want to be involved in the mayhem. She grinned. Alright, and how would we recruit people quickly when we don't even speak Italian? Speak for yourself, said Sharon. It can't be that hard, said Petrus with a shrug. Bapa-da-boopy. It took me a moment to realize he wasn't joking. How many languages do you speak? I asked him. 5.5, he said. Maybe 7 if you count related dialects. He tapped on his phone before demonstrating his linguistic skills by swearing in several languages. What's wrong? I asked. That's the internet, he said. It's much slower than it should be, and unfortunately, I think I know what's wrong. It's the satellites, I said. Even more are gone now. There's more, said Petrus. The water levels are falling because of the cold creating ice at the poles. That's exposing the underwater communication cables. And with all the animals going crazy, they're probably damaging a lot of the cables. Are we going to lose the internet? Sharon asked, looking genuinely horrified. Not completely, said Petrus, but it'll only get worse. And phone lines, of course. Sharon grabbed her phone at once and called Chrissy. I'll teach you some Italian, teacher. Thank you, Moti, I said, trying my best to sound enthusiastic. How will you cope with reduced internet? My primary functions will not be hampered. I'm very clever. That's reassuring, I said. Oh no, Etienne, what if we lose contact completely? I shall attempt to contact Mr. Etienne at once. I have successfully contacted Mr. Etienne. Mr. Etienne, I said, are you alright? I'm fine, but why are you calling it this hour? And since when was I Mr. Etienne? I laughed in relief. I was just worried we'd lose contact because the internet slowed down. Moti always calls you Mr. Etienne, and I guess it just stuck. Please don't give me a nickname you picked up from your watch. I am not a watch. Sorry, Moti, said Etienne. Does this mean I can give you a nickname? Sure, he replied. I really get to choose, I said, suddenly drunk with power. Sure, said Etienne, within reason. Fuckface. Alright, I said. You maintain veto power. Go on then, he said, laughing. You're making me nervous. If he was in Indonesia, said Petrus, speaking up after a huddled conversation with Sharon, we abbreviate Etienne to Eto. Who's that with you? Said Etienne. A friend. Petrus, I said. And Shazza, said Sharon with an evil grin. Now the suspense really is killing me, said Etienne. What have you and your infamous friends come up with? Tintin. Done. That's funny. Etienne blew out a breath. Sure. I bit back an apology and let myself smile instead. You couldn't see my face after all. About Santiago, he said, bringing us back on serious topics. Please tell me you're about to leave Italy. Even over here, I'm seeing golden eyes everywhere, but everyone knows Santiago's in Rome. Soon, Tintin, I said. What? He said. I raised my voice. We definitely plan to leave Rome ASAP. What? I can't hear you. Are you still there? Can you hear me? I asked. The line went dead. I'm sorry, teacher. We will need to converse with Mr. Etienne another time. I rubbed my eyes, surprised at how frustrated I felt. I didn't have many true friends, but Etienne was one of them. Are you alright? Sharon asked. I didn't realize you and the Canadian hottie were an item. We're not an item, I'm just edgy? What does that mean? Sorry, Sharon glanced sideways at me with a grin. So, if you and I were separated and our phone call was cut off, she said slowly, how would you feel? Oh, I would be absolutely love-struck teenager who's been grounded. Her face softened into a vulnerability that I'd only seen when she spoke to Chrissy. Don't worry, you little ticker on my account, she said. I'm as tough as old boots and twice as long-lived. Whatever happens, I'll be right. Glad to hear it, I said. In the meantime, we have a cult leader to follow and a missing astronaut to find. You're right, of course, said Sharon. I'm going to make some friends. You'd be amazed what you can sniff out if your alcohol tolerance is high enough. I nodded. And I'll... Teacher, Miss Montague was calling you. How? I blurted out. Weren't the phone lines just down? She also has a emoticon device. Oh, I said. How does that help? Emoticon devices are excellent learners. Learners? I narrowed my eyes in suspicion. I had a bad feeling about this. Moti, what did you do? I asked. I taught Miss Montague's emoticon how to use emergency communications channels. I was about to object to Moti's illegal activities when Sharon spoke up. That's settled then, she said. I'm getting one for Chrissy, the second we get a few minutes of working internet. Answer the phone. Putting you through to Miss Montague now. Thanks for calling me with all those health updates, said Dolores. I didn't know you cared, I snapped. Well, I do. There was a long pause. I'm concerned for all my employees, Dolores said stiffly, sounding embarrassed. Fine, I said. Is that why you were calling? I feel like I've been stomped on by an elephant, but otherwise I'm fine. Jonathan, she said, the supposed leader of the 100th Day group, is displeased about the direction Santiago is taking his little doomsday cult. So am I, but I seem to be in a minority now. He's on his way to Rome now to speak publicly against all the murdering and so on. All that murdering and so on. Ah, murdering. That's a terrible idea. He'll be killed. He believes the sun will come back and soon. Says he's got a feeling, and that his feelings have been right before, or close enough to take them seriously. Oh, this is bad, I said. This is very bad. Her voice softened. I thought you'd like to know. Why are you telling me this, I asked. What does it have to do with Luca Parmigiano? It was her turn to pause. Nothing, she admitted. I laughed at her obvious discomfort. You do care. Shut up, she said, but I could tell she was grinning, for a moment. Listen, I have an extraction team waiting for you a little way south of Rome, on the coast. They have a ship to take you to Egypt as soon as you reach them. I just need another day or two to confirm the Parmigiano cover-up, I said. Even when I try to help you, you can't do as you're told, she said. Thanks, Dolores. How long will your team be there? And can I bring other passengers? Don't push it, she said. A few days, and maybe. She hung up. It didn't feel like an insult this time. My hard-nosed boss thinks we should leave Italy now. Once we're done here, we should find a way out. We've got to finish up our job. I vote we head for the docks tomorrow morning, said Petrus. I second that, said Sharon. Fine, I said. We'll do it. But no getting into trouble, okay? Sharon grinned but didn't say a word. She excused herself to do what she called professional lollygagging. I went to bed. Even hungover, Sharon was cheerful. She drank about a litre of espresso and she was bouncing off the walls. We headed for the docks and quickly spotted several shady-looking characters, arranged in pairs here and there, obviously keeping watch. I wonder if they're here to help Santiago or stop him, said Sharon, drumming her fingers on her bag. I'm gonna go sticky beak. Shazza, wait, I said, but she was already moving off. Petrus and I had little option but to follow her. Sure enough, the first pair Sharon accosted both wore yellow contact lenses. They stood to attention, perhaps assuming they were being tested, since the three of us were so obviously not Santiago's people. Who are you and what do you want? Said the taller man. We're followers of Victor Santiago, and I can see you are too. They relaxed, which made me relax. It was good to see some nice stupid guards, unless they were faking it, of course. Come on, the tall one said. Let me show you something. His friend stayed in position, while he led us to the water's edge. It was bad. The lichen-covered rings on the pylons of Dock 3 clearly showed the water's normal height and depth, and how far it had fallen in just a few days of darkness. Earth is freezing over, he said, folding his arms inside a jacket that he'd obviously purchased recently. I hadn't consciously realised I was automatically dressed more warmly, despite what should have been mild Mediterranean weather. Victor Santiago believes that our planet will be saved through sacrifice. The Catholic Church has declared him a heretic. What do you think? Oh, Jesus. We have to say this, don't we? Otherwise they'll know that we're not one of them. He nodded thoughtfully. That's very interesting. Then he tasered me. My legs collapsed and I found myself sprawled in a wide puddle of brackish water. Ugh, I said, by way of protest. The guard, not so dumb now, hauled me up and dragged me into a shipping container that happened to be conveniently unlocked. It also had a wooden floor, carpet, a low bed, a wooden chest of drawers and 2 armchairs. Come on, I said exactly what they believe. He dropped me into one of the chairs. You're heavier than you look, you know that? Ugh, I said again, resolving to avoid tasers in future. He opened the top drawer and chose a syringe, checking the label before coming back and pushing it up my sleeve. I'm actually not very good with needles, he said, so I'd appreciate if you hold still. Ugh, I protested. Oh, don't fuss, he said, it's just a sedative. The taser's just for short-term incapacitation. I said, well, of all the kidnappers I'd met, he seemed the most concerned for my welfare. He stuck out his tongue with concentration as he dosed me, then put the syringe away carefully and applied a round frozen sticker to the injection site. There you are, he said happily. That wasn't so bad, was it? Oh, I said by way of agreement. Happily, the effects of the taser were wearing off and I was feeling my body return to my control. Listen, I said, I blacked out. I woke up in a different container, which seemed rather more elaborate than was strictly necessary. Petrus was gently shaking me, and at first I wondered why he'd kidnapped me. Then I sat up and vaguely registered that the container contained several people, none of whom looked happy to be there. I'm afraid we've been captured, said Petrus. Never mind, I said, feeling slightly high from my sedative. It happens. Jonathan is here too, said Petrus. I think we may be in real trouble once Santiago arrives. And Sharon? Sharon got away, said Petrus in a low voice. I introduced myself to the rest, feeling like I was visiting the world's strangest tea party. Jonathan wore a shirt and tie and explained to the others he was an accountant before the first sun outage incident. A woman introduced herself through Moti as a seamstress who had come to the docks to meet a new shipment of fabric and somehow failed to realize that being anti-murder was now a risky political position. The rest all knew each other and spoke English. They deferred to a slender woman with tattoos peeking up from behind her sleeves and collar. I'm Domina, she said, not making any attempt to pretend that it was her real name. You and I are in the same business. Confused by the way she seemed to be including me, I asked what she meant. You work for the company, yes, she said. I nodded, although I still didn't know who she or her compatriots were. For the first time, I noticed one of the men was missing both his thumbs. Our organizations are linked, she said, the company and the mafia. Oh, I said, blinking. I studied them once more. It was slowly dawning on me that I was in the company of the dangerous and powerful Italian mafia. She smirked at my confusion. Dolores hadn't mentioned the mafia to me, but she'd obviously let them know I was in the area, and that we were connected professionally. Domino laced her fingers together. I've enjoyed having His Holiness stand with us instead of being so disapproving. When it comes to Santiago, we find ourselves bound by a common enemy. I nodded, trying to put the pieces together. Not many organizations have the power to stand against Santiago anymore, she explained, but that yellow-eyed idiota is going to pay for letting his goons bother me and mine. If anyone deserves to be on the mafia hit list, it was Santiago. I found myself liking Domina, and nodded approval. She flashed me a smile before discussing the most stylish wooden outfits with our seamstress. Woolen outfits. Wooden. We all heard the lock click open, and the noisy creak of the door opening. The seamstress cowered behind her new friend, and I moved to stand in front of both of them. For the first time, I noticed a emoticon device on Domina's wrist. It seemed the Mafia had been doing well, at least until Santiago arrived. "G'day," said Sharon, her golden eyes sparkling. "Santiago wants you." She pointed at me. "And you." She pointed at Petrus. "And," she raised her eyebrows at me, and I realized I needed to indicate who else most needed rescuing. Oh, Jonathan, of course. Sharon was a little too convincing as a cult member, and even with his reassurances when it became difficult to extract our rescue. The guards were clearly getting suspicious, and the second we hit open air, Sharon told us to run, which we did. The guards stood frozen with indecision for a moment, and Domina took her chance and stormed the door, scattering prisoners everywhere. Sharon, Petrus, and I dodged out of sight and hid, listening as the pursuit moved elsewhere. "Nicely done, Shazza," I told her. "What took you so long?" "You'll see," she grinned, and led us through a maze of dockyard detritus to avoid any more guards on our way back to the hotel. We grabbed our things quickly and left, no longer feeling safe enough to stay in one place for long. We went to see a movie, since all of us were now targets for Santiago's group. Sharon had surely made enemies with her deception. I was far too well known among the cult members, and Petrus was far too well known a scientist to be safe. Once the movie was well into its third zombie attack, Sharon passed me her phone. "Play the video," she mouthed at me. I put the phone in my pocket and went to the bathroom, hoping Sharon didn't mind me playing it inside a stall. The newest video clip started at the docks, with distant shots of divers preparing for their investigation of some damaged communication cables that appeared to be in even worse shape underneath the water. Nearby, a large camera crew set up their equipment and began filming. The film cut forward, and a diver emerged from the water and was interviewed, now much closer to Sharon, as Sharon had evidently gained a better position. He kept his helmet on for some of the interview, so only the top half of his face was visible. He wore golden contact lenses and sounded as if he had a cold. "Thank you," the reporter gushed, moving his toothy grin closer to the camera as the diver left. That was astronaut turned aquanaut Luca Parmigiano, using his unique skill set to examine our waterways. He kept talking, but Sharon's camera phone followed the aquanaut as he walked away, still wearing full diving apparatus. A car pulled up beside him, and he tossed his helmet in the trunk before peeling off his diving suit and tossing that in tow. He took out his contact lenses, tossing them on the ground as rubbish. Then he peeled off his face. I heard Sharon's recorded gasp, and the camera turned jerky as she ran into a position a little ahead of the car and managed to get a clear shot of the man's real face just before the car caught sight of her and screeched away. I rewound to a scowling still frame of the man. This most definitely wasn't Luca Parmigiano. So the rumours were true. Not only was Parmigiano missing, but the cover-up included at least one elaborate fake. Dolores would be ecstatic. She'd tell the world. The cover-up would be exposed, and a few more energy companies would go bust as consumers lost even more confidence, leaving our client, General Resources Inc., to mop them up. And a few more thousand people would flock to Santiago's cause as they lost faith in the ability of the Italian government to protect its own citizens, or even admit they were in trouble. I chewed on my lower lip and finally reached a decision. Don't send the clip to Dolores. The moment I stopped watching the film, I registered the real-world noise from the street outside. I put the phone in a zip pocket and stepped out of the bathroom into the cinema foyer. Outside the glass doors, a mob was chanting. For a moment, the noise was just noise, and I understood what they were saying. "Victor, Victor, victorious!" One or two glanced my way, and I realized the doors were locked and barred from the inside, and the ticket sellers had already fled. The crowd turned sideways like one giant creature and pounded on the doors. I'd seen mob behavior before. There was no stopping them. I ran back into the theater, running into Petrus and Sharon at the door. "We have to get out of here," I gasped. "The building is surrounded. You cannot avoid the crowd." "There aren't any good hiding places," said Petrus gravely. "In any case, a mob this size is likely to commit arson soon." "You're the multidisciplinary scientist," I said desperately. "I sure hope you've studied psychology, because we need to figure out how to outwit a mob." He winced. "There's only one way." "Tell us," said Sharon. "Alright then," said Petrus. "To stay safe, we have to join them." "Okay, but we stick together." "Good luck," Petrus said gravely, shaking both our hands. We all heard the sound of breaking glass in the foyer and took off in the opposite direction, aiming to get out of the rear entrance, where our fake willingness to join the crowd would be more convincing. It was lucky we travelled light. We found a fire exit door propped open and a couple of people already inside, as if by accident. They looked dazed, as if they'd just woken up. "Where's everyone going?" said Sharon, sounding excited. "Is Santiago going to make a speech or something?" "Oh," said one of the people, moving back outside, as if pulled by a string. "Yes, something. It's going to be wonderful." One of the others nodded vigorously. "Today is going to change everything." "There will be light again," sighed a third. "Santiago will save us," the first one said happily. "He'll save us all. Today." "Today, today," the others echoed. "It will be day again." "Wonderful," said Petrus, with what sounded like real warmth. We followed them outside. Some people were running outright. The whole mob was moving quickly. I spotted dozens of individuals weeping with ecstasy. Today, huh? Perhaps this is the moment Victor Santiago has proven to be a fraud. This I had to see. Move slower than the rest so the crowd subtly outpaces you. Someone registered Petrus's face and cried out in Italian. Petrus laughed delightedly, as if it was all a wondrous joke. The person who recognized him frowned in confusion, but before she could say anything further, the crowd swept her away. Petrus had unconsciously slowed his steps, and he stumbled as someone ran into him. He visibly gathered himself, but it was too late. Around him, knots of people ran and walked and chatted and stumbled, and he couldn't get past them. "Shazza," I said, but she was already gone. I saw her blonde hair bobbing up and down with her steps far ahead. "We gotta help Petrus, he fell down." The crowd moved like one giant monster, with individual faces distorted by the irregular artificial street light under a black sky. I missed the sun. It had been such a long time I'd lost count of the number of days I'd spent in the dark. Petrus is in grave danger. I caught in a crowd that was happily following an anti-intellectual madman. I fixed my eyes on his black hair and tried to weave between people to get closer to him. It looked like he was aiming for a row of cafes where the outdoor furniture was breaking up the crowd's cohesion. I hoped he knew what he was doing. His best protection was his anonymity inside the mob. Someone elbowed me right in the kidney, and I yelped in pain, twisting away and stumbling over the curb. I fell, but the crowd held me up. When I had my feet under me again, I looked back at the overturned cafe tables where I saw no sign of Petrus. I didn't want to get knocked onto a chair leg, so I flowed with the crowd, still looking for Petrus as I let the crowd carry me. A heavy hand gripped my shoulder. Twist away and lose him in the crowd? Oh, I need to wrap up. Stop, Petrus shouted, it's me. I turned to face him, trembling as the last wave of adrenaline left my system. Don't look at me, he said, glancing around guiltily. Keep your eyes on the stage like everyone else. I turned away obediently. The plaza was so crowded with cult members that it was barely moving. I had so many questions for the astronaut who was in space when the sun went out, he said. That's why I came to Rome in the first place. I hoped all the conspiracy theories were false, and Luca Parmigiano was just going about his business as usual. I was so looking forward to meeting him. His voice was raw with grief. I'm going now. Somewhere a bit safer, where I can stop chasing dreams and get back to work. What kind of work, I asked. Data collection, he said vaguely. Washing dishes. Whatever. Are you alright, I asked. I appreciate humility, but you're one of the greatest minds still alive. Thank you, he said mechanically. Perhaps the children of Gaia will take me in. Who? I chucked. They're real scientists, despite their name, Petrus explained. Last I heard, they're in Portugal. I'll take a train or ship there rather than a plane this time. Sure, I said, hearing the emptiness in his words. Good luck. He laughed bitterly, and the heavy hand lifted from my shoulder. Petrus was gone. Everywhere I looked, I saw flashes of golden eyes. Fortunately for me, things were moving so quickly that not everyone had found the time to buy new contact lenses, and there were a few people here and there who still had their own eye color. I wondered if there were innocent bystanders desperately pretending they'd arrived at the plaza on purpose, or if Sharon and I were the only ones. A huge roar erupted from the crowd, and I flinched by instinct before seeing what they were seeing. Victor Santiago had appeared on the stage. His image was expanded and multiplied on a series of enormous screens all around the plaza. He was dressed in all black, with his arms and legs spread wide to embrace his thousands of followers. His golden eyes appeared to glow in the darkness, lit by a single spotlight from a frame that must have been erected as hastily as the stage itself. My people, he cried in English, echoed by an Italian translator somewhere backstage. This is our day. The streets are flooded with your brothers and sisters. The authorities bow to us. The faithful pray to us. The sun returns for us. The cheering and screaming filled the plaza, ringing in my ears even when the crowd hushed for Santiago's next words. We are no longer the 100th day, Santiago said, his intense voice amplified to be even louder than the crowd. We are a new breed. We are the victorious. The screaming rose to new heights, and I began to think that even if I survived, my hearing would not. The victorious, someone whispered nearby. Like on TV? My daughter loves that show. Shut up, whispered someone else. I bit my lip hard to suppress a burst of hysterical laughter. A moment later, no one was laughing. Santiago stretched out his right arm, making his hand vanish in the blackness. He pulled back his hand, dragging a red-headed woman by the hair. She collapsed at his feet, sobbing in terror. No one else made a sound. This woman is an unbeliever, said Santiago, staring straight out at the crowd as if daring anyone to disagree. The woman's sobs echoed around the plaza, amplified 1,000,000 times over. The crowd barely breathed. With his left hand, Santiago drew a gun from a holster under his black jacket. Moti vibrated on my wrist, drawing my attention to a silent message. Teacher, Mr. Santiago is going to kill that woman. I dipped my head in a tiny nod. Should I call the police to stop this? Or Miss Domina and the Mafia? Moti display indicated that all I had to do was tap the right section of the screen to show my decision. Alright, we're going to wrap this one up here, because we are out of time for today. I'm inclined to call the Mafia. You don't know how much of the police is compromised, but the Mafia are straight enemies of them, so that's probably what we'll do. But we'll find out. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Thanks for watching. Thanks for hanging out with me, and I'll see you in the next one.